It's time to begin the countdown as we discuss the Nintendo Switch 2 pre-launch in the first part of our Nintendo Switch 2 launch special. So first of all, I know we've gotten a bunch of new viewers since our GameStop video did pretty well. So hello to everyone who has subscribed to the channel since that video came out. Hope you'll stick around. We got some really cool stuff coming along, especially if you enjoy game collecting or gaming content in general. You're going to like this channel. I collect a lot of games. I don't play as many as I probably should, but I collect a lot of games. And I'm very excited for the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2, which is the first console launch that we're actually going to cover on this channel. That's only because I didn't have this channel until 2022, I think. Whereas I have covered console launches before on my main channel, BigCTV. I believe the first one that we did a full documentation of was the Xbox One. Then we also did a little thing for the Xbox One X, not a lot, but a little bit. And then, of course, we covered the original Nintendo Switch in 2017, and then the Xbox Series X and the PS5 in 2020. So it's been a while since I've done a console launch series, but it's time. We're getting a new console in literally a couple weeks, so get hyped. It's pretty exciting whenever a new console comes to the market. So basically what we typically like to do on this channel when it comes to console launches, or I guess in general, since this is the first time on this channel, I'll do kind of a pre-launch video where we talk about, thoughts on what we know so far, reasons why the console will succeed or reasons why it may fail. Spoiler alert, I don't think the Switch 2 is going to fail. I think there are some things that could affect it negatively, but I don't think it's going to fail. It's not going to be a Wii U or a, that kind of situation. It's funny because I did two different videos for the original Switch. One was talking about 5 reasons why it would be a huge success and 5 reasons why it would be a huge failure. And that one, it could have gone either way because it's coming off the Wii U, which is one of Nintendo's worst-selling consoles. So it genuinely could have been a huge success or a huge failure. Obviously, it was a huge success. But people still comment on my why it would be a huge failure video and say, oh, at that age, poorly. Yeah, but you know what didn't? The other video where I said it was going to be a huge success. So, just saying, I like to cover both sides just in case. I'm not going to do 2 separate videos on that, though. I think instead I'll just discuss it in one, like I did with the Xbox Series and the PS5. So, we'll talk about that in a second. Typically, what I like to do when it comes to the console launches, of course, we'll do a pre-launch video. Then we will do a video covering the actual launch, so that's going to be on June 4th of 2025. I have my Switch 2 already pre-ordered. I'm still working on getting enough credit to pay off everything. The console's almost done, that's the most important thing. The games and the accessories, I've got a ways to go, so I'm just hoping I can find enough credit to pay it all off. I don't got a lot of time, so we'll see what happens, but I'm hoping I can find enough. But yeah, that's going to be exciting. So we're going to do that. We're going to cover the launch. Of course, we're going to do a mega unboxing where I open up not only the console, but the controller, some of the games. We'll go over everything that came with the console itself. And then we'll do kind of a post-launch video where I discuss my thoughts on it after using the Switch 2. Usually that one comes out like after a couple weeks. So yeah, that's kind of what we typically do for launch specials is we'll do a few videos, one pre-launch, covering the launch, the unboxing, and then some post-launch content. So that's kind of what you have to look forward to. So now let's talk about some pre-launch. Now we have already done a gaming talk episode talking about my thoughts on the Switch 2 after the full reveal on the Nintendo Direct, but it has been a little bit since then, and we have a little bit more information. not only from stuff that Nintendo's revealed, but other publishers have revealed as well. So we've learned some information about the Switch 2 and some things that people were speculating about that was not necessarily true. So I wanted to kind of go over that as well as my general thoughts, and then we'll go over reasons why it would be successful and reasons why it may fail. It won't fail, but we'll talk about it anyway. So, first thing to dispel, of course, the rumor of physical games being $90. Thankfully, that one was wrong. Mario Kart's just $80. It doesn't matter whether it's digital or physical, it's just $80. It's also on cart, which is cool. So Nintendo has risen the bar for that, but the other thing to keep in mind is Mario Kart right now is the only $80 game. There is a collector's edition of Daemon X Machina 2 that's $90, but that's a collector's edition. The regular game is $70. So it seems like the $80 thing is not the most common. Also, Donkey Kong Bonanza is only $70. So I think they're just charging $80 for Mario Kart because they know, well, it's the big launch title. Everyone's going to want to buy it, so pay up, basically, which isn't the greatest, but I don't know. At least it's not like a widespread thing that everybody is charging $80 for Switch 2 games. It's just that one right now. So it seems like the vast majority of Switch 2 games are going for the more standardized pricing. You'll see like a couple $40, some $50 for some of the remakes and remasters. Of course, Nintendo's games, a lot of them are charging $70, the full price, which up until this point, the only regular edition game that was $70 was Tears of the Kingdom. Now we're getting these Switch 2 editions that are also $70, which the fact that they're charging $70 for Breath of the Wild 8 years after it came out is wild to me. Tears of the Kingdom is still 2 years old, so both of these games are not new, but the fact they're charging $70 for them is just wild. But at least it's not a widespread thing. Of course, the Welcome Tour being $10 is wild. It's something that should have been free, absolutely uploaded on the console. I mean, come on. It's wild for me to praise Sony for a lot of things because they do a lot of baffling decisions. But Sony made Astro's Playroom completely free on every PlayStation 5. Nintendo could have and should have done that. They also could have and should have made 1-2-Switch a pack-in game for the original Switch, and of course they didn't. They charged $50 for it, which was a mistake. But charging $10 for the Welcome Tour is wild to me. The fact that it's supposed to be like a tutorial that shows you all the features of the console. Why would I want to pay for that? Like, it should just be included, but, you know, Nintendo's got Nintendo, I guess. There's all that. The big controversy that I think a lot of people are really struggling to grasp, and I'm going to share kind of my thoughts on this as well, are the key cards. Now, some information has come out regarding the forms of physical media that Nintendo is doing for the Switch 2, which helps a little with the keycard situation, but also doesn't at the same time. Apparently, according to, I believe it was Marvelous, one of the third-party publishers, there's only one size of the on-cart options for the Switch 2. It's the biggest one, the 64 gig. That's the one that Cyberpunk is using. A lot of games don't need that much space, and it's kind of a waste of money for a indie publisher to put their game on a cart when the vast majority of that space is not going to be used. So that's why you're seeing a lot of these smaller games, like some of these remakes or like Puyo Puyo Tetris, getting key cards instead of a physical release. It's because the only option is for a 64 gig when the Switch 1 had a number of different options. And hopefully Nintendo realizes that they need to do the multiple options again. I guess the idea is that the key card is kind of a catch-all where, they could do the big 64 gig for those who want their game on a cart, but anybody who either has a game that's larger than that or smaller than that, they can just do a keycard option, which, I mean, I'm not a fan of, obviously. As a physical game collector, I like to have my games on disc. I know, or on cart. I know that's becoming less and less of a thing. One big example of that recently is Doom: The Dark Ages. That game does not have barely anything on the disc. It's basically a keycard. And that's from Microsoft. A number of their games are doing it. Indiana Jones on PS5 did that as well. So it's not a new thing. It's kind of new for Nintendo. The positive about it, which a lot of people are not giving the keycards any sort of positive press. One positive thing I will say is it does resolve the issue of, well, you can't trade or resell digital games. You can with a keycard, because it is technically a physical thing. Granted, the game is not on that card, but it allows you to sell or trade that game and gain monetary value for it. So while I don't necessarily like the fact that the vast majority of games are keycards on the Switch 2, it's better than code in a box, it's better than digital only. So it's one of those things where I get why people are upset about it. However, it's better than it could have been. Because Nintendo could have easily, with this generation, just decided, you know what? We are going to bite the bullet and we're just going to go digital only. They easily could have done that. And I completely see, the one that's going to scare me is I have a very sneaking suspicion Microsoft, when they announce their next console, is not going to do any physical media whatsoever. They're already kind of going in that direction, just basically leaning entirely into Game Pass, which I like Game Pass. Game Pass is great, but I want physical games on my shelf, and not releasing games like Avowed or South of Midnight physically at all, and then stuff that they are releasing, like Doom: The Dark Ages, being code card or basically key cards where the game isn't on the disc, and then their multi-platform that's a whole nother thing, and I'll talk about that in a future video. But yeah, the key cards I don't think are the worst thing in the world. No, granted, if you have an option to purchase a game on a card as opposed to the key card, I would go for the game on the card. And there are several games, oddly enough, where if there's a Switch 1 version and a Switch 2 version, the Switch 1 version is the game on a card. The Switch 2 version is not. It's a key card. Like Sonic X Shadow is on a card if you have the Switch 1 version, but it's a key card on Switch 2. Or I believe the new AI, the Sonum Files game, that one is on card for Switch 1, but not for Switch 2. So, the best thing I can say when it comes to key cards is put your money where your mouth is. If you really don't like the Switch 2 key cards thing, don't buy them. I'm buying a couple of them just because these are games that are not getting on-card releases. But if a game does have a version where it is all on a card, I will get that version. So, for instance, for the new AI game, I'm probably just going to get the Switch 1 version. Hopefully they do an upgrade, but who knows. Sonic X Shadow, I have the regular Switch version. I'm not going to trade that in because why would I want a key card when I can have the full game on card? So those are kind of my thoughts on that. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, but I also understand why people are kind of upset and miffed by the key card concept. Now, in terms of everything else that we've kind of heard, ranging from the quality of the games, to how powerful the console is, the feel of the controller, all that good stuff, I'd say overall people are pretty positive on the Switch 2. If you exclude the key card conversation and you exclude the price, because obviously that's one thing people are very much not happy about, is the price and the fact that everything except for the console got more expensive, at least in the US. I get that. I get that it's frustrating. Anytime there's a price increase, that's frustrating. Xbox did the same thing. I strongly disagree with that too, but, they gotta do what they gotta do, I guess. So, overall, I think people are pretty excited. Those who are genuinely excited about the Switch 2 are excited about the Switch 2, myself included. I'm excited to play Mario Kart. I plan on playing Mario Kart as soon as I get the Switch. I'll do my unboxing video, I'll open everything up, and then I'll download Mario Kart and hopefully play it that evening. That's the hope. But overall, I think, in terms of the experience, I think it's just going to be a souped up Switch. The UI looks pretty much the same. A lot of it looks almost identical to the Switch. I mean, even the Pro Controller, yeah, it's got a couple new things here and there, and I think it's going to be a better controller overall, but it's going to look and feel just like the regular Switch. So I think anybody who's going into this expecting for it to be like a big, massive jump is probably going to be a bit disappointed, just because it's not. It's going to be kind of like going from an Xbox One to an Xbox Series X. The UI is the same. The experience is the same for the most part. Now, I guess the main difference with the Xbox One and the Series X, the load times are better, quick resume, smart delivery. There's a lot of things behind the scenes that make the experience significantly better between those two consoles, and I think that's kind of going to be a similar vein with the Switch 2. You'll notice better frame rate, you'll notice better graphics, all that good stuff. The fact that it can run more powerful games, should load faster. I think those are the main things people are going to notice when the Switch 2 comes out. And of course, like the physical traits of like, it has a bigger screen, the Joy-Cons are bigger, the magnets. I think that's probably going to be the most fun people are going to have, and I will be doing that as well, is like pulling the console out of the box, messing with the magnets, seeing how it feels in your hand, all that good stuff. So I think that's going to be kind of the biggest positive out of the Switch 2 launch when it comes out, is people are just going to mess with the console and see what they think. So, alright, let's talk about reasons why the Switch 2 is going to be a big success and maybe not so much. So, first things first, if it ain't broke. Nintendo is very much taking that into consideration when it comes to the Switch 2. They took what was popular about the Switch and amped it up. It's just a more powerful Switch. Pretty much it. They tweaked a few things here and there. People complained about how the Joy-Cons attached to the console. They made that better with magnets. I think the magnets are going to be a huge improvement. People complained about Joy-Cons being kind of small. They made them bigger. The screen is small. They made that bigger. I mean, it's underpowered. It's still slightly underpowered, but it's much closer to the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series than a lot of people give it credit for. I mean, the fact that a console that you can take on the go can run Cyberpunk is kind of crazy. I wasn't planning on getting Cyberpunk. I'm honestly kind of tempted to, just because the novelty of being able to play a game like Cyberpunk on the go is pretty wild. And I want to support CD Projekt Red for actually putting the full game on the cart. So I might actually get Cyberpunk. But yeah, I think taking the if it ain't broke approach does tend to work. Xbox took a very similar approach when it came to their console, like I mentioned earlier. They took what was good and just made it better. The Series controller is just a slightly better version of the Xbox One controller. Feels a little better. They made the D-pad better. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So that's exactly what Nintendo is doing. They're not taking any big gambles, which, I mean, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, you look at a console like the Wii and then compare it to the Wii U. They took kind of a big gamble with the Wii U, making the focus of it the gamepad, calling it the Wii U as opposed to the Wii 2, I think was a mistake, because people thought that was kind of a extension of a Wii as opposed to a new console. At least with the Switch, there's no comparison. You have the Switch and you have the Switch 2. It is the sequel to the Switch. So they learned from that. They're not calling it the new Nintendo Switch or, you know, any kind of iterative name where people think, oh, it's just a regular Switch. This is the sequel. So I think that was a smart move by Nintendo to call it the Switch 2. The second thing is, I think they're really trying to focus a lot more on third parties. Now, the Switch kind of brought third parties back into the limelight, because the Wii U lost third-party support very quickly. I mean, they had EA for a little bit. I think they only released like one set of sports games on the Wii U, and that was it. And then they had like Mass Effect 3. So they lost a lot of their third-party support very quickly. on the Wii U, whereas they kind of gained it back to an extent on the Switch. Obviously, we didn't get Madden or Call of Duty on the Switch 1 because it really couldn't handle it. But we are getting them on the Switch 2 now that it's more powerful, so that's a positive. So they're kind of trying to mend the bridges that they burned down with the Wii U, and to a lesser extent with the Switch 1, with some of the big third-party partnerships. So I think this focus is really going to help them. Obviously, people buy Nintendo consoles mostly for Nintendo games, but I think focusing on third parties is really going to help the Switch 2. So, and plus, people are just excited to be able to play a game like Elden Ring or Cyberpunk on a portable console. Like, that's just cool. Granted, the Steam Deck exists, but that's a little bit different of a system than a Nintendo Switch. So, that's pretty cool. And I think the third big boost and reason why the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be a big success is going to be their focus on online. I think Nintendo is trying. Now, their online service has never been particularly great. I will say, of course, the game that I honestly played the most online is Animal Crossing. That's because it was during 2020 when everybody was stuck at home, and that was kind of our way to join up with their friends, is to, hop on Discord or a phone call and play Animal Crossing and visit each other's islands. That was probably the best that I've seen a Nintendo online game go. Of course, you couldn't really do voice chat. That has been fixed with the Switch. Now they have a built-in voice chat option, and you can even have a proper headset on the Switch 2 Pro controller with a headphone jack. So there's definitely some good stuff there, and I think they are trying to lean a bit more into what modern online is supposed to be. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and how much all of that is going to be incorporated into the DNA of the Switch 2. I mean, the fact that they have a dedicated C button for game chat, that tells you that they're not messing around when it comes to online. They really want people to play these games online with their friends and chat online using the game, or using the system. So I'm pretty optimistic. I think they're doing a good job when it comes to that. Now, how well it works in practice, we're going to find out. But I do think that their focus on online is going to help them in the long run. Now, again, the Switch 2 is not going to fail. I'm just throwing that out there right off the bat. It's not going to fail. However, reasons why the Switch 2 might hurt Nintendo's reputation or hurts the Switch's reputation in general. Number one, getting too cocky. We've seen this story before, mostly with Sony. PlayStation 2 was a massive success. It's one of the best-selling consoles of all time. Then they came out with the PS3 and they thought they could do no wrong, when in reality, up until the very end, the PS3 was not a huge success. It was overpriced. They used this proprietary chip that was difficult to develop for. There's a reason why a lot of PS3 exclusive games have not been ported to other consoles. That's because the cell processor makes things kind of tricky. So a lot of games that were developed for PS3 are not easy to adapt to other platforms with easier to develop for chipsets. So Sony got really cocky. Now, granted, they did learn from their ways at the end and kind of recovered, but it shouldn't have got to that point. And it does make you worry that Nintendo might be doing the same thing by thinking, oh, well, we can do no wrong. We can charge for our welcome tour. We can up the price of games because we feel like it. We can not put games on a physical media because we don't want to. There's a lot of decisions that Nintendo can make and have made already that could really hurt their reputation. And I have a sneaking suspicion that the market is what's going to dictate how that goes. I think the Switch 2 is going to sell well initially. I think it's going to do well overall. However, if they keep releasing $80 games or upping the price of games, if they don't put their games on sale, which they already don't do that very often, I think that's going to hurt the Switch 2. I think making things too expensive, making things bad value is not going to help their reputation. It's not going to help people want to buy a Switch 2 if they already have a massive library of Switch 1 games. So that's one thing that I think Nintendo needs to be careful of, is don't get too cocky. Number 2 is going to be giving up on the game chat too early. So Nintendo also has a bad habit of taking something that may not necessarily have been the biggest success and getting rid of it or giving up on it too quickly. One of the best examples of that is the 3DS. Towards the end of the 3DS's lifespan, they kind of just stopped doing 3D. Everything was it was released on a 3DS, but it was just a 2D game. They didn't do the 3D slider. It wasn't developed for the 3D in mind. And I mean, as a 3DS owner, if you're wanting to play a game in 3D, that kind of does sting. The fact that, you can't do that with this game. I'm worried that they might do something similar when it comes to the voice chat or the camera. Those are two features that they heavily marketed when they first launched and announced the Switch 2, adding voice chat and then the camera functionality. I don't want them to just be like, oh, well, we released it. The camera works in Mario Party and like a couple other games here and there, but then we just stop using it. They need to keep supporting their stuff, because if they don't, people have no reason to buy them. That's what a lot of these companies don't realize, is like, you have to support your stuff and make it a worthy investment, or else people are not going to buy. You can't just completely base everything on, well, people didn't buy it initially. Yeah, because it's not worth it. You have to make it worth it. Same with game chat. I think if they implement the game chat in a good way for most games, or if they, tweak a few things. I mean, honestly, one of the most forward-thinking things Nintendo could do what Xbox has done and add Discord to the Switch 2. I think if you add the ability to stream on Discord, also add the ability to stream directly on the Switch, because all the other consoles have it. The PS5 allows you to stream directly from the console. The Xbox Series allows you to stream directly from the console. The Switch does not. In fact, you have to do a whole rigmarole system to stream anything from the Switch. Just give people the ability to stream directly on the console. Don't have to use an Elgato or all this other hardware just to stream. Allow people to just use the camera, use their own headset, and stream directly from the Switch 2 onto Twitch or YouTube or wherever they want to stream. I think that would help a lot, and that would help convince more people to use the built-in stuff as opposed to having to spend a bunch of money and build their own setup to do it a different way. So utilize what you got. Don't give up on things so quickly. Don't get too cocky. And then, of course, the last thing is don't get too greedy. And, I mean, that comes across immediately with Mario Kart being $80. If they had a Smash Brothers game to come out soon, that would be $80. At least. Maybe more. The next Zelda game, is that going to be $80? Is that going to be $90? We don't know. They just keep making decisions that are baffling. And I think, even though people are generally excited for a lot of their games, people need to draw the line somewhere. And that's the only way that these companies ever learn, is when people decide, okay, we're not falling for it this time. We're not willing to do that. So I honestly, and this hurts my soul as a physical collector, but I think the way to really tell Nintendo we don't want $80 games is to not buy the physical copy of Mario Kart. That's the only $80 game right now. And I think the vast majority of people are going to buy the bundle at launch, but we need the physical copy of Mario Kart to sell horribly because it's $80. Now, if they put it on sale, buy it. But because it's $80, we need it to sell terribly so that they realize, we can't keep charging $80 for these games. So I think those are the main things that Nintendo needs to be aware of. Don't get too cocky, don't give up on your features that quickly, and don't get too greedy. So there you go. That is kind of our pre-launch discussion for the Switch 2. So the next things you can look forward to on this channel when it comes to Switch 2 coverage are, of course, going to be launch I'm going to do a launch video where I document what I did before the launch, the actual launch event, and then we'll do an unboxing where I open up everything up so you can see what the Switch console and all the accessories, all that looks like up close. And then, of course, a post-launch video where I talk about my first gameplay experiences with the Switch 2, with Mario Kart, with all the launch titles that I purchased. And we'll go from there. So, lots to see, lots to enjoy, lots to look forward to besides game hunting content. We're releasing a lot of content on this channel. Hope everybody enjoys it. Hope everyone keeps watching it. And as long as people do keep watching and keep enjoying it, we'll try to keep up releasing as many videos as possible. So yeah, that's going to do it for this first episode of the Nintendo Switch 2 launch special. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell. That way you know when new videos drop. And I will see you on launch day for the next episode of the Nintendo Switch launch special. Bye-bye.